G'day, fans, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Talking Stuff, where my mate, Mr. Aaron, sitting over there, and myself just yap on about science fiction and things. Mr. Aaron, how you going, old son? Are you cooking on gas or what?
What people watching don't realize is before the show starts, we talk stuff, and then we talk stuff all through the show, and after it ends, we talk more stuff. So, yeah, I'm right in my element here, talking stuff.
So when we don't talk about stuff, does that mean that we've got like stuff all to talk about?
Well, we're totally stuffed.
We are indeed. Well, guess what, fans? Believe it or not, it's our 10th episode. So we're into double figures all of a sudden. How cool is that? 10 weeks straight. We've been gurgling on about stuff, which is particularly cool. And I've got to say, that's rather groovy. Remember, the idea of this entire show has always been about Aaron and I just talking stuff, and everybody else just dials in to sort of like listen to what we have to say and put in their 5 cents worth. How good is that, Mr. Aaron?
Here's a fun factoid: the show was originally called, but we changed it, Talking Shit.
We do that all the time too. So there you go. Oh, look at this. It's better than the season of Docky. It's Docky with a CKY. Oh, man, we haven't even started already. The old Docky who's copping a bit of a hammering. Unbelievable. Well, guess what, fans? We've got a fair bit to cover off tonight, which is rather cool and interesting. And some of it's actually quite serious too. And other things are just generally entertaining because hopefully, depending on how your day's been, we can put a smile on your respective dial. Isn't that right, Mr. Aaron?
Yeah, we're the happiness patrol.
Party. What can I say? All right. So first things first, we're going to have to kick it off with of course, you've got to have can't do anything without a bit of news, and of course, to do that, we have to do this. Very good. No expense as all. So, fans out there, for those who are wondering, I've got some fan stuff to kick off first. Oh, we go. Killer Clown has joined us with a whole lot of face palms. Well, good for you, Killer. Is it Mr. Killer or Mr. Clown? What can I say? All right. So, first things first, the thing we've got to kick off with is a very other big deal. It's actually occurring the weekend after next. It's a Fandom United event hosted by Austrek, the MSFC, which is Melbourne Science Fiction Club, Star Walking, which is the Star Wars Club, and the Doctor Who Club of Victoria. For those who are interested in checking it out, it's a multi-club event. Happened last year. It was absolutely fantastic. So we're going to promote this next week as well because it'll be leading right into that Saturday. So if you've got nothing on the 1st of June, you must go down there and check it out, which is very, very groovy. Mr. Aaron, how exciting do you reckon this is going to be?
Well, it's exciting for me because I think Aaron's Collectibles is going to send a tub of stuff for the auction. So everyone go down, don't spend on the dealers' tables, and just wait for the auction to spend on some of the cool stuff from the shop.
Now, it's funny you should mention that because I do believe I know the auctioneer personally. He's some cool dude who's just going to get up there and ramble on behind the microphone. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but I do believe that he is just the coolest of cool dudes. What do you reckon about that, Mr. Aaron?
Is it me?
No, yeah. No. I didn't say a legend of the universe. I just said a cool dude, and legends are way above cool dudes. So had you been there, yes, it would have been you probably, but it's not. So there you go. Very, very cool. So anyway, that's the 1st of June. Be sure to check it out, guys. As I said, we'll announce it again next week as well for those who may have forgotten. Now, the funny thing is today is the 23rd of May, right? Which is by itself means absolutely nothing. But in 2 days' time, we get this, the actual May the 25th, International Star Wars Day. So for those people who think it's May the 4th, okay, for the general plebs out there it is, but true diehard Star Wars fans know it's the 25th of May because 25th of May 1977 is when Star Wars first came out. So if you're a true diehard fan in 2 days' time, which funnily enough is a Saturday, and that's 2 days' time, Thursday, Friday. On Friday, you can go and party hard and rock on, put on your best Star Wars gear, wave some lightsabers around the house and go, I'm a true nerd, not this May the 4th impersonator stuff. What do you reckon?
I'm not doing another sale.
And for those who are watching for the first time, you go, oh, Aaron just said he's not doing another sale. Is he like a yachtsman or something? No. He actually has his own collectible store. But anyway, yes, the 25th of May is actual a Star Wars Day for those who like that sort of thing and who care about that sort of thing. But that's in 2 days' time. Funny enough, today's Thursday. What's today? Thursday, isn't it? Today, yes, this came out. Furiosa, the Mad Max film, which is kind of groovy. So it's the 5th Mad Max movie that's been produced and the sequel to Fury Road, the prequel to Fury Road. I'll get that right eventually. The trailers, of course, look very, very groovy. Mr. Aaron, will Furiosa be on your list of movies worth checking out in the extremely near future.
Yeah, I'm sure I will. I like Anya Taylor-Joy. I think she's pretty good in most of the stuff she does. Wouldn't it be cool if she was playing the same character as she is in June? Because they're both in the desert. So I'm just being facetious there. But it is one of those things. It's a movie I'll go see, but I probably would have just preferred another Mad Max movie.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. My first thought was, I mean, there's probably a good reason why Charlize Theron isn't back to play Furiosa. It's great they've substituted one great actress for another great actress, but having the same actress play both characters, it is a prequel. It's not like she's a baby in this. Probably would have helped a little bit, but by the same token, I mean, they've changed Max, obviously, from Mel Gibson, so you can probably deal with it. But
Yeah.
Furiosa was such a big character in Fury Road, and they go, oh, they're making a prequel. Oh, it's a different actress. And you go, oh, okay, what's the deal with that? So does that mean that, hang on, sorry, years from now, someone's going to have to digitally replace either Anya Taylor-Joy or Charlize Theron, one of those two movies, with the other actress so they both match up? Sorry, dude, go for it.
I do think it's set 30 years before, so it does sort of justify a younger actress. And you can see some of the other characters are a lot younger than they were in Fury Road as well. It is one of those things, though. I don't think it matters. I mean, there's been different people playing James Bond. No one wants to scrub out Daniel Craig and put in George Lazenby, do they?
That's a very, very good point. Anyway, look, it doesn't really matter. At least, as we said, they've replaced a high quality actress with another one. So it should be very interesting. It is made by George Miller, but it comes out today in Australia and I think overseas tomorrow. So, yeah, you'll have to go and have a look and check it out and see how it all goes. And if you like your dune and you love your deserts, and as we know, sand gets in everywhere, so it'll be well worth having a good look at, I reckon. So,
but there's something else coming out at the cinema that's pretty interesting, isn't there, Dags?
There is, and this one I just heard about today, and I thought it had me scratching my head. I could not believe it. But Docky Who, believe it or not, is getting a cinematic release for the last 2 episodes of this season. Now, we don't think it's in Australia. We think it's probably in England and somewhere else. But the show only just started last week, right? And they're already announcing the finale. Dude, what is that? They can't get this thing out quick enough.
I'd like to point out the show actually started 60 years ago, but this series started this week. It isn't a precedent. They have put some of the bigger episodes in the cinemas before. I think the last one they showed in a cinema in Australia was actually Jodie Whittaker's premiere episode. So it might come out here. I just saw this earlier today as well, so I don't know if it's a global thing. They've shown more in the cinemas in America than they have in England, actually. So it probably will be shown in America as well. But we've got to remember Disney Plus has the rights outside the UK now, and the BBC have it inside the UK. So I don't know if the rights are the same as it used to be. Fingers crossed it's on the big screen. I always like watching Docky Who on the big screen. But I'm not 100% sure. Is interesting they're going that way. Maybe they need to claw some extra money back after the massive ratings failure that you would have if you're in the UK, or the massive rating success they're touting on Disney Plus. It is interesting to see them go that way.
Yeah, I was just surprised that it got announced so soon. I mean, it's like the 11th of June, right? And that's like 3 or 4 weeks away. So it's getting in pretty damn early, considering this series, this season only just started. And I agree with you. Maybe it is a way of saying, well, the last 2 episodes we want to bring in extra money, as opposed to them saying it is so damn good you've just got to see it in the cinema. And it would be disappointing if you went and saw it in the cinema and you go, you know what, it really wasn't much chop at all. It really didn't cut the mustard. So only time will tell. I agree with you. Good on them for doing it. You do wonder if it was done here, would it be a massive success and people be clambering over each other to get tickets for it? At the moment, you'd think not. But if the rest of the season's still yet to go, so yeah, there's still plenty of time for
it's an interesting here. Don't want to linger too much on Doctor Who because we do the other show, but the 50th anniversary was sold out at the cinemas here for the weekend it was on, every single session. And then some of the animated stuff, they put Power of the Daleks in the cinema, and I saw people walking out because it was a bit boring for the general audience. So we'll see how that goes down.
Okay. Regarding Furia, I can't. It's hard to say. I kept saying Furiosa, but it's Furiosa. William said it was too much CGI from what I saw in the trailer. I'm surprised. I think they do a lot of it practically. Actually, that's one thing that the Mad Max movies have going for them. All right, on a completely a different tangent. And Andrew said Paul McGann. Just a question mark. I don't know what you mean, Ange. You're gonna have to be a bit more specific regarding that. One of the things that I saw just yesterday, I'm a bit of a late bloomer, a late starter, blah, 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 blah. I finally got around to watching the Barbie movie. Okay. Now, we're not going to be discussing the Barbie movie here in detail. And if you haven't seen it, this isn't a spoiler. It's not a big deal. And it's nothing you're going to lose your lunch over. But the start of the movie, which I do believe they did this as a trailer, funnily enough, was actually set up using the 2001 A Space Odyssey intro, right? And I mean, I personally, I thought it was great. It was really cool. The very first shots that popped up, I go, hang on, this looks like 2001. And it turns out they replicated the intro sequence. So it has the also Zarathustra music. And the idea is that young girls who used to play with dolls suddenly discover Barbie dolls and their lives change, which is pretty cool. So I just thought for those who are interested, I've done a shot for shot comparison between what was put into Barbie and what ended up in 2001 A Space Odyssey for those who are interested. Now, the irony is the target audience for Barbie will have never seen 2001 A Space Odyssey. The actresses, the young girls in Barbie, in this sequence, wouldn't have a brass razoo clue as to what 2001 is. But for old farts like us who are not the target audience, it actually matches up really well, and it was actually kind of cool. Before I get into the shots, what did you think of the opening 2001 sequence for Barbie? Did it work for you?
Well, I thought it was great as a trailer. I thought it was good because, I'm a nerd, so I realized where it come from. But where you said the target audience won't realize where it's come from, do you know what they'll be saying? Wow, isn't this great? They've done a parody from everywhere all at once, because they did a
Yes.
parody of that in it with the long sausage fingers, didn't they? So
Yes, yes,
you'll
yes.
get some people go, well, they were just doing a parody of that. That's great, and not even get the joke.
Well, the laughs will be on them because if you got all these young people, let's assume it's young girls, young females, they go, "Oh, that's my folks told me that was taken out of a movie called 2001: A Space Odyssey. I got to go check that out because that sounds like an absolute blast. Now, what could possibly go wrong regarding that? Oh, gotta laugh. Anyway, so I did a shot for shot comparison for what they did with it. Remember, it's a truncated version of the intro for those who are interested. First things first, they use the actual shots from 2001: A Space Odyssey. You got Barbie on the left and 2001 on the right. The actual shots. As soon as these popped up, I knew straight away where it was from. And of course, once you heard the music, you go, "Oh, okay, that's actually very, very groovy." Yeah, an interesting cross promotion, isn't it? I mean, you could not get two franchises more further apart. So as I said, it is a truncated version, right? But they use the actual shots, which I thought was very cool. Now, this is grouse. It's the same shot from the movie, but as you can see, they've removed the what looks like the elephant's head down here, the skull, and put the shoe in, which implies it's a dead girl. But let's not worry about that, shall we? But yeah, I reckon that is absolutely fantastic. What do you reckon, dude?
Yeah, it is one of those things where I think, especially in the trailer, I thought, oh, this is going to be a totally different movie to what I thought. It's actually going to be a bit more smart and intellectual. But I was wrong.
So I saw this on Netflix last night, and they actually included this at the start. So I'm assuming this is a part of the movie, right?
Yeah.
This I thought was very cool. You got the two girls at the top playing with the dolls, and you got the apes down the bottom. I mean, you look at the rock formations there, and even the background, and even like the foreground. That is pretty damn impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they went all out. Someone must have been a big fan of Kubrick, mustn't they?
I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming it's Greta. I can't pronounce the surname. I think the director, maybe she had was a big fan of 2001. I thought, what a great way to introduce the show. So it's not the dawn of man; it's the dawn of girls, if you will. But I love that. I thought the attention to detail is fantastic. The sequence where the girl wakes up to see the monolith, which in this case is obviously Barbie, versus Moonwatcher down the bottom. The angles are a slightly bit skewed off, but I did like that where this one up here just wakes up and looks at the Barbie there. This was really pushing my buttons at this point. But if there's an error in the setup of this, it's this particular shot because as you can see, Moonwatcher is looking in this direction, whereas the girl here is looking straight up. But, not that it really matters, but I thought I'd just call that out.
Yeah, I thought it was good. And maybe Barbie wins because, from a personal point of view, I'd rather wake up and see Margot Robbie than a black obelisk.
Dear. Oh, yeah, come on, Barbie, let's go party. It was a shame they didn't use that song in the movie, by the way. I just sort of want to point that out because it seemed like it was ideal for it. With that in mind, that's the comparison between the two. So aside from the moon at the top, everything else has been recreated because the clouds are all different. But that was very, very groovy. I've got to say, that actually really kind of pushed my buttons. And of course, you get the sequence where they actually, the girls go up to the legs of the Barbie versus the Moon Watcher and his troops and his apes at the bottom who go up to the monolith. Yeah, that one's a little bit all out of whack. I mean, they've got the mountain range over here in the corner, okay, which is the same there. And the rest of the rockery is pretty similar. A few other changes, but you get the gist without a problem. I kind of really worked for me. And I did love the fact that when she touches the legs, as in this girl just there, she recoils from it, which is exactly what Moonwatcher does in 2001. I reckon that was great.
Yeah, there's almost the opposite to that scene, really, in The Wolf of Wall Street. But Leonardo DiCaprio does not recoil. Does not recoil from the legs.
It does not indeed. It was almost a sci-fi perspective. Jeff Rose made a point to say, come on and use this word a lot, because for those who don't know, if you Google the word sci-fi perspective, everything that comes up relates to Sci-Fi Zone and the shows that we produce. So we own the internet as far as Sci-Fi perspective is concerned. This is cool, right? This is when the girl gets the doll and starts smashing all the other dolls, right? And I made some comparisons compared to when Moonwatcher goes with Troppo with the bone. Even though from a cinematic angle, it all looks completely different, the mindset is the same. And I thought this was really good. She gets the doll and smashes other dolls. That was ingenious. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I thought it was good, and it shows Mattel's dominance by smashing all the dolls that came before.
Well, wouldn't it be funny if these other dolls were manufactured by other companies? I don't know who Mattel was up against at the time. Just say it's Fred's Toys, and Fred's Toys logo is written on the back of that doll's head as it gets smashed to pieces by Mattel doll.
I think that doll sitting up and looking at her should have actually spoken and said, "My name is Talkie Tina, and I love you very much."
Yes, you better be nice to me. Exactly right. I absolutely love it. It was very well done. And of course, in the throwing sequence, now this is impressive, right? They've got the rockery at the side there, down the front here, which is really good, well lined up with this. She throws the doll with the right arm, as does Moonwatcher with the bone. The background all looks the same. I mean, the coloring is obviously different, but that was really, really impressive. And I got to say, that really pushed my buttons and absolutely loved it. What do you reckon? It hooked me straight away. I go, that is an awesome scene in the movie.
So tell me, what did you think of the rest of the movie?
Yeah, look, that's a discussion for another. We won't do a DNA reviews on it. Look, I didn't dislike it, but it really wasn't my cup of tea. And to be fair, there are some things, the comedy and the silliness kind of didn't work for me, but who cares about that? Well, guess what? Now that's all the latest that's going on at the moment. Anything you want to bring up before we move on, Mr. Aaron?
No, I'm happy to move on.
All right, now I'll get to press this little button and show this little thing because it's completely relevant to what we're going to be discussing next.
We are all interested in the future, for that is where you and I are going to spend the rest of our lives.
So the thing is, we're going to be discussing the whole artificial intelligence with movies thing, whatever, right? Before I start putting on some pictures, the thing I find really unusual at the moment is that when anybody in the modern world, say as of 2024, people say, wouldn't it be awesome if you could get a movie that was made 20, 30 years ago and updated with all brand new special effects, really ramp it up into the 2024s, it would look great. People have said that about the Dune, the 84 movie. Some people have discussed it with Star Wars. Star Trek, of course, has been ramped up a few times regarding new visual effects to make them look newer, to make them look better, and to really make the show shine. Suddenly there's this impetus about getting shows and taking them backwards. So instead of going forwards, they go back to the 1950s or whatever. And they're now actually showing, and I pressed my wrong button, press my button, thank you. People are now making trailers using the existing films that we've got and then using AI to make them look like they were made in the 1950s or the 1940s and whatever else. Now, they're just trailers. They're just things that people have put together. But there's a whole range of these things coming out. And what do you think about this, Mr. Aaron? I don't really watch these, right, because they're fan-produced creations. Does it work for you? Does it not work for you? What are your thoughts?
Look, I think they're okay as a bit of fun. It is really weird because I do think after like the appeal to them sometimes is seeing your favorite movie from a different era, but I do think it's quite crude still when you look at them. I do think it's the people doing it have got a good idea. And I mean, when I say it's crude, it looks really good, but it's still in the it it doesn't you can tell they didn't make that in the 50s with a high budget, if you know what I mean.
Oh, I know that. I'm not looking at it and saying, "Oh, are you completely sucked into thinking it was made in the 1950s?" I'm looking at it from
Yeah.
a concept of people saying, "Oh, we're getting modern day films," and I'm sure someone's going to get a bit. Well, I'm going to use Barbie as an example. One of the MCU movies, and trying to make it look like it was made in the 50s because it's an idea. Now, the funny thing is that most of the time people say, "Well, movies made in that era served their time. They've had their place in the world, and we've all moved on." But now there's this impetus to say, "No, let's take everything back again. Let's take brand new
Yeah.
stuff and go back into 70 years ago and then recreate it accordingly." Whether it works or it doesn't work on a technical level really isn't the main issue. It's the question of why would you do it in the first place? And if the person does something really special with it, can they make money out of it? So that's two
No.
separate discussions. So first things first, do you understand why people are doing this in the first place? Considering movies from the 1950s are, for the most part, lost in the past.
Oh, absolutely. I can see the appeal in it. It's one of those things where ever since the internet was created, anyone who can sort of come up with a new idea and do it. I think they're popular at the moment because it's new. I could see people, wearing thin on it really fast, kind of thing. It's a lot of pretty sci-fi images, and I think it talks to the inner nerd in a lot of us because it's a lot of the time it's stuff we'd like to see or we wish had been filmed in the 50s.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting one. And the fact that like the artificial intelligence thing has really come to the fore and they've said, okay, now we can use this technology to um, do this work. How far do you go with it? And what would happen if somebody said, that is such a great idea. We want to take, what can I use? We'll use Iron Man as an example from, was it 2009? And we're going to give it the 1950s treatment and then just reissue it all over again if it was done professionally. Um, do you think, and I'm sort of jumping around a bit here, do you think that would actually work? Or was it just the gimmick that people are going to go, that is a really done concept. Why would you do that? What are your thoughts?
Well, it's one of those interesting things where it'll happen eventually, but they've just made laws because, I mean, it's one of those things. How do you even categorize it, really? But they have said in laws in America anyway that you can't use anything created by AI, you can't copyright and make money out of because if it's a hard thing to kind of explain, but anyone can do it, and so they can take properties and stuff and get the AI to do it. You can't make money off of that because it's like there is no real skill behind it because you're asking an AI to do this stuff. Now, if you were maybe an artist and you got a bunch of friends and you filmed all this stuff yourself and did all the special effects yourself and used CGI for some of it, there's a more artistic a more artistic thread that leads back to someone. But people doing this don't don't particularly have any talent. Um, they go to an off the shelf AI creator and say, "I want this," and they type in what they want, and then the AI 100% churns it out. Now, if you released it at the cinema, again, I think there'd be a group of people who'd want to go and see it, but the whole legalities of it is right up in the air at the moment.
So that's an interesting one because I always looked at it from the point of view of the 10% rule. So usually you take a property, you change it by 10%, the copyright sort of changes. And in some of these instances, can you change something enough? There you go. You know what? It looks so far removed from what it was originally that you can get away with it. I'm not entirely sure. I tend to agree with you. There's a whole lot of legal issues regarding these. And at the moment, they're just being done as a bit of fun. But if it's
Yeah,
someone at some point says, oh, hang on, there's something in this, this could actually really go places. Now, at the moment, these are just trailers, right? Just a lot of random images that people have just used AI to put together. But it is pushing the concept of filmmaking in a whole new direction. And the moment someone says, here's a good example. Someone takes a sci-fi movie that did really poorly, really badly made in the past 20, 30 years, gives it this treatment, and then suddenly, like, this is awesome. It's like a complete rebirth. And then it finds a new audience and people want to see more of it. I find it's crossing a very interesting sort of line, and it is so cutting edge that at the moment, I don't think people know what to do, how to deal with it. And that's what I think is really interesting. So it's not a bad thing, and it's not necessarily a good thing. I'm just intrigued to see where it could potentially go. Yeah.
So yeah,
sorry.
it is one of those things. They just started, I guess, popping up on the feeds on Facebook and YouTube, and obviously they gained some popularity, and they have taken off. And it is one of those things. What you said is quite intriguing. Say the director of John Carter of Mars said, "Well, it bombed when it came out. I'm going to put it through this AI filter and totally make it look like a Republic serial movie from the 30s or 40s, and we're going to release it again." That would be interesting. And I guess if they paid all the original actors and it was all done legally, it would be a really interesting thing to see.
John Carter's a very good one. That's a good example, actually, because it was just the original story was written so long ago. And if they were to be able to retrofit it with the 50s look. And to be fair, the 50s look is actually really good. It really works. And I've got to say, I'm still going. I've got to say, it really pushes my buttons. And I go, it's very cool. It's a very cool concept. And as was mentioned by William here, these are now popping up it's like people have just uncorked the genie bottle, and these things are just everywhere now. And of course, there's going to be some which are better than others. And naturally, they're like trailers effectively. And I think people are going, what movie can I do next? What's the next one on the list? And there could be people waiting to say, as you said, John Carter. Can someone, worldwide announcement, can someone please give John Carter the AI treatment? Because I really want to see how it looks. And there's a good possibility that the trailer of John Carter, I'll get it right eventually, sorry, John Carter done in the AI way would look spectacular. And it may just reinvigorate interest in the original movie. So,
yeah, well, what would be really funny if someone said they were going to drop a 30s 40s version of John Carpenter's
You're doing it too.
The thing, and they just did a link to the original thing.
Yeah, there's that too. As he said, you could use it to redo an old film and modernize it. Yeah, we discussed that at the start of the conversation. I mean, you'd think that would be the most logical thing to do, get old movies to look really, really modern. But things are going backwards. They're taking modern movies and they make them look like they were made decades ago. And I do wonder if there are young people, in the millennial generation looking at these things going, that is freaking grouse. I don't even know what this is even from. This is really cool. The 1950s, what's that? And actually going back and watching real 1950s movies, because to be fair, the visuals on a lot of these things are absolutely stunning. And I've got to say, I don't know what buttons people have to push to make these things work, but I've got to say, absolutely impressive as. So, it's really cool.
They're actually a bit of a cheat, because there are no movies from that era that actually look that good. Probably the best looking sci-fi from that era would be Forbidden Planet. And that's maybe 20% of what they've got there. What they're actually doing, it looks like they're almost taking the pulp magazine illustrations from that era and turning them into what if they had the budget to make these as movies. So it's a really interesting concept. I do love the look of them. It is, for me, very faddish. I don't know if you would remember, because you're not a horror fan, maybe 10 years ago, people started recutting trailers of movies like Mary Poppins as a horror, and it was really well done, and it looked like it could be a horror. And they were around for 6 months and everyone loved them. And then people moved on to other stuff. And I do think once all the movies have been done, once they've done all the Aliens and the John Carters and the obscure stuff, that'll be it. They'll move on to other stuff.
Yeah, look, it's a good point. It is just a fad at the moment, and it's really gaining legs. And of course, the thing is, because there's no governance around it. So we've just seen, like at the start, I showed you the Fifth Element. Someone has done a Fifth Element AI, but that doesn't mean someone else can come in and go, "I'll do a better job than that. I'll get Fifth Element and I'll do my own version of a 50s AI." And there could be like 7 or 8 versions 5 or 6 years from now, all trailers, all done by different people. And some of them are actually better than others. Or funnily enough, imagine this. You go, well, okay, if the person who created that Fifth Element trailer doesn't own the rights to it, I'll download it and I'll put a 50s filter on top of that. Or I'll put a 2024 filter on top of the 50s filter and just see what comes out of that. And you end up with a completely different property again. It's an absolute mind spin. And all this has occurred only in the past like month or two, as far as I'm aware. And I reckon it's just where it's going to go is anybody's guess. But I do think some movies, or some trailers at least, if they're redone in this format, are probably going to look better than the original trailers that they spawned from, that they had originally.
You'll have to copyright that, a multi-filtered movie.
Yeah, exactly right. Hang on. Them's fighting or leaves Forbidden Planet alone. Oh, yeah, we're not talking about Touch of Forbidden Planet. He was just saying it looked like Forbidden Planet. No.
Yeah. I wasn't saying change Forbidden.
No, sorry. Go. Ads, you got to stop turning up late, dude. He said about the only film that looks like it was a 1950s movie based on this technology was Forbidden Planet. Never going to touch that, so there you go. Yeah, it's very interesting. So I'll have to see where it all goes. But yeah, clearly Star Wars is getting a bit of a workover at the moment, and some of the other movies, which is particularly cool. And yeah, visually, I love the space scenes and the ships and whatever else. And I'm sure that's just going to inspire a whole bunch of people. At some point, it's going to go somewhere. Someone's going to say, you know what? That is a great idea. Let's employ that dude, even though he's just pushing buttons on the AI filter, and to do something. So,
what would you do with something like Flash Gordon that's already so, bright and out there? The filter would probably not really add much to it.
Good point. People have been reworking movies like Star Wars for decades, and that's completely true, actually. And you could be right. It's just another variation of that, but it's a different variation, and it's like people are really dialing into it. It probably wouldn't work for everybody, but yeah, for some people, it's quite cool. But anyway, look, I don't watch them. I have no real interest in them, but I did like some of the imagery. I thought it was very, very cool. Even when they put in the filter of the 1950s film grain, that's probably not necessary, probably going a bit further than necessary. And of course, they can't do dialogue. It's just shots of people and just the voiceovers. But you never know where it's going to end up. Yes, cool stuff. But you are right. People have been mucking around with these things for ages. Good. Any final words on AI changing existing movies there, Mr. Aaron?
No, I could go further, but well, I think we need to move on. We're going through this episode. Time's running out.
It is indeed. With that in mind, it is time for this.
A question.
All right. As always, we've got a question without warning. And funnily enough, this is something that I thought about today, and I go, well, this is an interesting kind of discussion topic worth having. Mr. Aaron, without any warning whatsoever, here's the question. Has 3D printing changed the prop collecting industry? And where I'm coming from regarding that is that if you're a film production company and you need to have props made, it doesn't have to be guns, it could be anything. And they say, beauty, will just 3D print said prop because it's a lot quicker and a lot easier. Someone just designs the software product and they just shoot it out. And that software becomes available online and anybody can produce an accurate screen replica of the original prop. Is that a good thing or a bad thing regarding prop collectors?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I'm probably one of the few shops in Australia where I have discussions like this regularly, and I've spoken to a few people about it and how it could be good or bad for the industry. Of course, if people knock out stuff and it's 3D printed and they try to sell it as props, that's a bad thing. But most props are sold which are sold from actual movies, are cobbled together and aren't 3D printed. Even if they've been mass produced, it's usually vac formed. 3D printing is actually an expensive process still at the moment, just because of the time and the material used. That said, how awesome would this be if a film did make 3D printed stuff they used on screen, and then they licensed that so anyone could actually take it home and print it out on their own printer, so you have an exact prop replica of what was used on screen, and that'd be pretty cool. 3D printing, it's one of those things where there's a lot of people who have a printer in their garage and they knock stuff off or they make stuff for themselves. I won't use his real name, so I'll use Spankin, which isn't his real name. He was going to 3D print a full-size IG-88 for the shop, because
Hmm.
you can get the designs online. There's a lot of people who have worked them all out and scanned them and done all the 3D modeling, and then either put them up on prop collectors things for free or sell them for a nominal amount. But that hasn't eventuated because it actually takes some skill and some talent and some time and a working printer to actually have that occur.
Couple of things. I like this comment. We're just back on the AI discussion. Ads has said someone needs to run an AI filter over this show, so that'd be.
I thought they did. That's why we look like the Muppets characters.
Yeah, exactly right. So just to clarify, I hear what you said about the backforming thing. The thing about backforming is you actually need a positive of the product, and the thing just goes over the top. Whereas 3D printing, if you've got the software of the design of the image, and assuming it's identical to the real one that they use, then the printed out item will also be identical. Sure, you've got to still craft it and stick it together and glue it and paint it and whatever else. That, not denying that whatsoever. So that is definitely a key part. And anybody who does modeling or prop collecting will say that they don't just come out of the printer perfect.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting one because I'm intrigued. So if they make a sci-fi movie that's coming out and they go, but they produce props, guns, walkie-talkies, blah 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 blah, and you go, okay, historically, prop collecting has been a really, really exclusive business. Here's a screen used one of these, right? In fact, it is screen used because it's on the screen right now. A screen used one of these, seen on screen, blah, 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 blah. It's absolutely fantastic, but it's going to cost you $50 million to buy it. Fine. The next best thing is to get a replica of it, which also looks just as good as the real thing. Does the whole industry get devalued if suddenly everyone has access to exactly the same perfect replicas? So all you need is the software. And as you said, anybody in their garage can just go print, and because they don't have to do anything, and it just comes out perfect. They just sand it, stick it together, paint it. Will that devalue props in the future? Not necessarily the screen used ones, but the replica ones.
No, I don't think it will. What it will probably make happen is the provenance to important pieces will probably become more important, because if they can be copied easier, then you're going to really want ironclad provenances to where something has actually came from to make sure it's genuine. There is no way that, if you have a real genuine, screen used lightsaber from Star Wars, and then someone can make an exact replica of it, even, we're not even talking 3D printing, even from the original pieces they used, without provenance, you've got a $100,000 piece and a $2,000 or $3,000 piece, and there's no way, no matter how good they got, that you could ever, I guess if you're scamming someone or you faked provenance. But apart from that, a 3D printed thing is never going to be worth as much as the original. No way. I can't see. See that.
Yeah. I totally get you. The screen used ones are definitely in a league of their own, right? Where I was coming from, looking at it from the point of view of saying you walk into someone's house and they got all these props all around the room, and they go, "Oh, that looks grouse. Where did you?" And they look absolutely spectacular. I mean, to be fair, the person who's got them is probably, let's keep it simple, outsourced it. So in other words, he's got the print, he's got the pieces, given it to a friend of his, who's put them together, painted them, and they're done, right?
Yeah.
And to say that everything is just so easy now, because all they say 10 years from now, where practically 3D printing for films is probably going to be the norm. People can say, well, I can get a prop of anything and it looks identical to the original because all the files are available. Whereas once upon a time, you needed to go to a craftsperson who had the ability to manufacture a perfect replica, which was really, really difficult. It wasn't easy. A lot of stuff looked good, but it didn't look accurate. Whereas if you can get exactly the same screen accurate piece, even though it's not on the screen, is that the next best thing? And does that then devalue the entire collecting industry? So you have Fred, who's got 30 fantastic props, replicas around, and they are replicas. They're absolutely spectacular. And all he had to do was just press print on a machine to get them all out. Gave them to a mate of his who just glued them together, and we're good to go. So I don't know. It's just a thought. I'm not saying it's one or the other.
Well, look, I could see it absolutely devaluing like the people who have licenses to make prop replicas, because if you have a company like Master Replica or someone like that who produce something, well, we'll just say Star Wars because everyone knows it from a Star Wars license, and then you have a 3D printed version of the same thing. And what you're saying is right. You need someone who has some craftsmanship. So we have friends who, are prop creators. If you let's say the training remote, because they released one of those, and that's a really iconic piece. That's a really lovely piece. But now, because it hasn't been available for 20 years, you're looking thousands and thousands of dollars to get one. If someone did a 3D model and sold that 3D model so people could print it at home, $20, and you print it up and you make it yourself. But someone who's a real artisan, if they got that 3D model and then they painted it and aged it and put on metal pieces to it and all of that kind of thing, yes, it would bring the price of the master replica one down, because suddenly there's something that's just as good, but it's on Etsy. And they get like all these 5-star reviews saying it's the most fabulous replica you've ever seen. Suddenly it annoys the people who've bought the expensive one because it devalues it, but it makes people who thought the expensive one's way out of their price range happy, because now they can grab one at a more reasonable price, maybe a couple of $100 instead of a couple of thousand. So there's pros and cons for both of it. If it's a cottage industry, it's probably okay. If someone tries to really make a lot of money out of it, then there's issues.
Interesting point. Mark, I like this one. Aaron, you're now going to try and get the pen. This is this pen, by the way, which doesn't even work. I just use it to hold on to. So it's going to have a bonus cap for the pen and a certificate of authenticity. Yeah, absolutely, because we know that Aaron is a bit of a capitalist dog sometimes. Many people are using 3D printers to make molds for vac forms for casting, which makes sense, actually. So you only need to print it once, then use cheaper techniques to make a ton of them. If you were doing for movies like a whole lot of soldiers, absolutely you would do that. You wouldn't 3D print the whole lot. So that makes a lot of sense. But it does make props a lot easier to obtain, and they look absolutely spectacular because they're using, this is what I'm saying, the original file from the original thing. So they're about as perfect as you can get. There you go.
Like this different. Sorry, we knew people who rebuilt robots like 1-to-1 scale, Robbie the robot, and they wanted to get a vacuum form of his dome, and it just doesn't exist. And they did this 20-30 years ago. They had to go to the Ford manufacturing plants in Geelong and get the engineers there to actually sculpt one and make them. And it cost thousands of dollars. I mean, there's a big difference between that and getting offline 3D model and being able to do it that way. So that makes it a lot better for actual costume and prop makers.
Indeed. As I said, the Razor Crest was 3D printed. So if you had access to the file that they use, you could make yourself a perfect replica of the Razor Crest, which is cool. So yes, for people who collect props, replica ones as an investment, because they're really hard to get and there's money to be made from them, they're going to suffer from. But if you're on this other side of the coin, you just want them because they just look cool and you can get them anywhere and they look great, you're going to win. So you are right, it's checks and balances. So, but what was once a bit of an exclusive industry, imagine walking to someone's house and they've got all these things hanging around the wall. You go, mate, got seen thousands of those. Boring. Give me something new. And that's going to be a bit sad when that occurs. So, but there you go. So anyway, it's just one of those things. We're not right or wrong. It's just having a chat as we do, which is particularly cool. Now, this is actually a lead on to our discussion from last week. So if you remember, we discussed TV shows that were success stories overnight. We're doing the exact opposite. We're talking about shows that were cancelled too soon. All right, they got one season, bang, done, forgotten, out the door. And funnily enough, the show that we led with last week, which was a massive success overnight, was Firefly. Great and wonderful, but it too fits into this category because it was cancelled after one season. Mr. Aaron, what is the deal with TV shows? They get the How's Your Father after like one season. What's the deal with that?
All I can say is you'd never want your TV show in the Friday night death slot, because it seems for some reason TV executives in America particularly don't ever know where to schedule sci-fi. And Friday night is notorious for being particularly slow, because who stays in and watch TV on a Friday night except us nerds? So they used to debut a show, in a regular time slot. It'd get quite a good ratings. And then they go, do you know what? We're going to put it on Friday because all those people will watch it on Friday. Now it comes down to money. I guess now it's streaming is different. But basically, you have all the demographics, you have the people watching, and then they can sell commercial slots to their advertisers. And Friday night, when there's no one home watching, no advertiser wants to buy those. So if you put an expensive sci-fi movie that, you know, a lot of them, the biggest budget for an episode ever in America on different sci-fi shows, in the Friday night slot where no advertiser wants to buy advertising spaces, inevitably, even if the show is one of the most beloved shows ever, some of the shows we're going to look at are very, very popular, the show will die.
It's a funny one because there's been scenarios. I know that, like, I've heard actors, Hugh Laurie, who was in House, he said that they always do a pilot for a TV series. Most of them never get picked up, but some do. So he did the pilot for House, and he goes, "Oh, lo and behold, it got picked up, right?" And you go, "Okay, we at least get one season out of it. One season, all goes well, it gets renewed, right?" And of course, with House, it went on for a number of years. So you can just imagine with the series that we're looking at now. To be fair, some of these stories really only go for one season, but others were clearly set up to go longer. Firefly being a good example of that. People go, "We're past the pilot stage. We've been given the tick. We're actually got a season. Yay, team. Party hard. We're going to be at this like for Star Trek for the next 7 years. Yay, team. Party hard." And 1 year later, you're gone. And usually when a show gets cancelled, it gets cut off. They just say, "You're not coming back, kids. We're done." I mean, how shattering would that be?
It is crazy. And I think the worst ones are, we'll see a lot of TV shows start with a movie length premiere, and they judge from the premiere if it's going to go to series, and inevitably it does, because they do all this advertising for, you know, this amazing sci-fi. It's going to be as big as Star Wars, and it's on and millions of people watch it. It goes to a series. They put it on Friday night, it loses all its audience, and some of them, they get cancelled before they've even finished filming the first season, which is why some of these shows, you know, have 6 episodes instead of a full like 26 or whatever, because they start so great and then bomb so hard.
That's a very good point, because they sometimes don't even get to air the last episodes. Colin's made a point of saying that the Time Tunnel lasted a season of 30 episodes. It was slotted for Friday nights. One show I'm going to point out, which is an absolute, I'm glad this went for one season because it was horrendous, was of course V, the series, right? Back from the 1980s, right? It was utter rubbish. It really, really was. And one season was actually too long for it. But you can imagine because you had V, the miniseries, V, the final battle, they produced the series, and we all thought, no doubt the actors thought, everybody thought this was going to be the greatest show in the entire universe, because the V franchise was so strong at that point, and the series was utter shit. And by the time they got to the end of it, it didn't even get to air its last episode. That was like, I can imagine the production company just said, that has just got to go. And of course, it was an expensive show to make. And some science fiction shows are just so costly to make. They go, you know what? The return on investment isn't there. Out the door they go.
Yeah, it is one of those things that's pretty sad, particularly with sci-fi. They do cost a lot more than other shows. That's why we have so many sitcoms. What Colin was saying before, though, did you know the Time Tunnel was the cheapest of Irwin Allen's series they produced? It only had one set, the Time Tunnel. They used so much footage from other movies to set the scene. It was much cheaper buying that than it was filming it themselves, and they used all the props and stuff from other movies, so it was really cheap. And you know what happened at the end of the first series? The executives said, "We want to cut the budget by a third." And Irwin Allen's like, "It's the cheapest show I've ever produced for you." And they're like, "That's why you can produce it cheaper." And he could have made more, but apparently it was his favorite TV series, so he actually wanted to keep the quality where it was and not make it cheaper. But that's a great one I didn't even think about. One series.
Ads has asked about Caprica was one season, and Caprica certainly was. And Caprica is one of my favorite shows. I absolutely adored it. It's a prequel to Battlestar Galactica. Loved it. And in fact, I'm planning to do a bit of a special review on it in the next few weeks with a bit of luck. But a lot of people didn't watch it. They didn't dial into it. And of course, the what worked against Caprica is the fact that it was a drama set on Caprica. You know, if you wanted to see spaceships and Cylons running around and all this, like real classic sci-fi stuff, it was none of that whatsoever. And I think a lot of Battlestar fans said we can't relate to it, even though the core story was awesome, and it was all worth it for the last 10 minutes of the last episode.
Come on, it had those Cylon vacuum cleaners, like they were fantastic.
Mate, it had the origin of the Cylon. Huh? What?
Did it even get a full series? I think that was one that they cancelled before the first series was filmed.
Yeah, it did. It did. It got halfway through the first season. They had their mid-season break, right? 10 episodes in there, got the rest done. But the last 10 minutes sets up the entire Battlestar franchise, but the history of the Cylons and everything. Oh, I have a lot of special place in my heart for Caprica, and a lot of people, Battlestar fans, never saw it. So,
yeah,
there you go. Some shows are cut short too soon, and the unscreened eps don't get sent until the DVD release. One of the ones that I laughed, I'm going to get to you in a sec. I know you got a couple you want to cover off. I saw this was funny when this came out. This was a sequel to another show, and it was cut off so short that the whole series could be covered off in practically one DVD, and it's Crusade. So it was the sequel to Babylon 5. What could possibly go wrong? 9 episodes, I think there is, and it just got out the door. See you later. What's the deal with that, Mr. Aaron?
Look, a lot of people bag Crusade. I actually loved Crusade. I was really getting into it, and it was cancelled. So I don't know. Babylon 5 is classic. I thought Crusade was different enough that it was a really good series and stood on its own merits, and then they just cancelled it. That was disappointing. All the shows we're bringing up are disappointing. I don't think when we got together and made this up, we're going to show all these ones that only deserved one series.
What you mean, like Galactica 80? So, yes, one was enough.
There was one good episode in that, but really, when you have that many episodes, like the trouble with Galactica 80 is they retoured Battlestar Galactica too much. I mean, yeah.
The problem with Galactica 80 was they made it in the first place. That was the problem. There we go. Ange is with you. He said Crusade was good. JMS, John Michael Straczynski, said the problem was they showed it out of order. That was the studios had the wrong order, and they kind of ballsed it up, and for the audience, it really didn't make a great deal of sense. But who doesn't like flying bikes? Exactly right. Well, if you like ET, you like flying bikes. So there you go.
Do you know
one season too much. Yep. What, man?
When I was a kid, I thought Galactica 80 was absolutely amazing. Like I loved it as a kid. You don't look at it through the critical eye, and space scouts and flying bikes and blowing up like LA and stuff was absolutely amazing. And then you watch it on DVD 20 years later, you go, oh, this is crap.
Yeah, I've watched a number of episodes in a row, and I go, oh my God, where are we going with this? But at least it introduced the idea that the Cylons could look like humans, which was very cool. Rusky Babies have got up a whole bunch of them. Went for a Fantastic Journey. I love Fantastic Journey as a kid. I wouldn't watch it now as an adult. Logan's Run, the TV series, I don't think lasted very, very long, or half a season, as you mentioned there. But yes, there's some that just, I guess, especially with Logan's Run, the film was such a big success. They make a series and it just sort of peters out and dies, and it's very unfortunate.
I absolutely loved both of those series. I loved, like, there's a whole lot. I don't know if you remember the Misfits of Science, which was a bit like X-Men.
God, the Phantom Menace of TV series. Boxing on a flying bike, why wouldn't you like it? And just quickly, sorry, before I get back to you, the trouble with Crusade is that we've seen the same story on Star Blazers. To be fair, not everybody's seen Star Blazers. Sorry, dude, I cut you off.
Oh, I was just mentioning some of the other ones, like I hadn't even thought about when Jethro brought out some of the things he mentioned. The Misfits of Science was one I particularly loved as a kid. Shadow Chasers, which was a kind of a bit like the X-Files, but everything was fake. Nothing was real on Shadow Chasers. But there's a whole lot of great... They became after-school shows when they failed, I think.
See, the thing is, we're all watching these shows as the same age, young kids, early teenagers, and we dial into it, right? And of course, if you watch them as adults were at the time, they go, that was complete and utter tripe. This one, I remember when it came out, Automan, this was a fantastic show. It was awesome. It was like Tron, but in the real world, right? And it was like, it must be the greatest thing ever. I bet you that if all of us watched Automan today, we'd be looking at it thinking, that is utter rubbish. But at the time, it pushed all these buttons.
It probably would be, but you know what? I'd still love that car. I loved Automan's car. And I loved it.
Well, not surprising. It was hang on. Automan's car was a Lamborghini Countach, so I don't wonder you loved it. Sorry,
everybody loved, but it was like the Tron light cycles, like you said, in real life. And I loved the concept that, you know, he could talk to the traffic lights, so all the lights went green, and the car could do like 90-degree turns on. Like, it was a great show, and it could turn into a helicopter, and it could turn into a bike and stuff. As a kid, that was like the Duke of Hazards, but sci-fi version of it. It was fantastic.
Automan had to go daytime because it was getting too expensive to film it at night. I mean, they used the Lamborghini Countach. I mean, Jeepers Creepers, they couldn't get a more expensive car, could they? It's worth noting that with a lot of TV shows, and even I picked up on this as they went along, a concept would come out, a show would get released, and you go, you know what? That's just the gimmick show. It can't last because the gimmick will just wear thin very quickly.
Yes.
And despite the great concept behind it, the writers are going to go, we've just hit brick walls. We just can't think of what to do with it. This is one of the ones that you picked up. I mean, I never watched this, but I go, what the hell? Manimal, that is never going to last. And it didn't.
Well, Manimal was great because they did the Glenn A. Larson trick where in the first episode, they showed all the animals that he changed into. And then they just used the same special effect in every other episode when he changed. So it kind of did wear pretty fast. But again, as a kid, has there ever been another show where the main character turns into different animals to fight crime through the episodes? No, I don't think there has been. The Wonder Twins, maybe? I don't know.
I'd forgotten about this one. The Highwayman. That has just come out of absolute nowhere. I don't know if it was Canadian or American, but that's the one where I think it wasn't Sam J. Jones, was it? And Jacko was the other guy who was the Melbourne football. Yeah, he was a Melbourne footballer who couldn't act to save his life, and he gets put into a TV series. Mate, I never saw any of it, but just hearing about it, go, are you freaking kidding me? The Highwayman.
Well,
Jeepers Creepers.
He was an individual.
He was, and you can't fool him. Unbelievable. I mean, some of them you do come up with, you do listen to it. And you go, how did this even get made? How did it get past pilot? How did someone say, yeah, sign that off? Here's the budget. Off you go, kids. What could possibly go wrong?
It is funny, isn't it? How you look at some of these content, like how would they have floated Manimal where they walk into the network execs and they go, we got this series for you. It's a guy, he turns into all different animals, and the big cigar smoking guy goes, I love it, make it, you know.
Just go in. Yeah, my kids will love it. In fact, maybe that's what sells them. They say my grandkids will love it, so just make it happen. I like this one, Jeff Rowe. He loves Automan as much as he does RoboCop the series.
I don't know if that's a compliment or an insult.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, some of them you're thinking, all right, when they're gimmicky shows, do you actually love them for what they were and go, oh my God, my heart's bleeding because they never got finished? Or you go, you know what? Enough was enough. But there are some shows that get made and you go, you know what? Their time is their time and it works. And this one I adored. I love this. And of course, it was the TV series of Watchmen. And it's set like 30 years after the film and the comic or the graphic novel. And I thought this was excellent. And if personally, I don't want them to do a second season. I'd rather just finish it where it did. And it was excellent. It was really good. It was really adult, really hard hitting. And it was the show that, as a sequel to Watchmen, was fantastic. So that was one that I thought had a good run, and where they finished, it was groovy. Because the last thing you want with any series that you adore is for them to go into another year and it goes down the gurgler, which doesn't happen all the time, but it can happen if they're doing it for the wrong reason.
Hello, heroes. But when my personal favorite growing up, because I loved Indiana Jones, even probably more than Star Wars. The trouble for me was there was nothing to collect with Indiana Jones, so Star Wars took over. I don't know if anyone remember Tales of the Gold Monkey, which was like an Indiana Jones adventure every single week. And I thought this series ran for years, because when you're a kid, you sort of, if something comes out weekly, it just seems to go on forever. And I was really shocked it was only 1 year. And in my head, there was a lot of things in it that didn't happen. I thought the girl was the same, was Melody Anderson, who was Dal Odden in Flash Gordon. And when I watched it later, I'm like, it wasn't. My memory cheated on that one. But I love this because it's one of the few shows, I think, where they've ever tried to do Indiana Jones on TV.
I was like you, absolutely addicted to it. I don't remember it. I don't want to see it again, even though I want to see it again because I might be disappointed. I thought it was, it's like when you see things as an adult and you go, you know what, I should have just left it in my childhood. But Tales of the Gold Monkey was definitely an absolute winner. So you and I would have been just tuned into the TV hardcore at the time. Speaking of which, I love this joke from Jeff. It took me a while to get this one, actually. Watchmen had its time. Good at Watchmen. Very, very funny. Man from Atlantis. Yeah, that was a show that was a gimmicky show. They go, every story has to be set in the water because he's clearly got to be, he's Atlantis, right? He's Patrick Duffy from Dallas. And it was like, so far, I can only do so many shows in the water. Can we do one on the sea? No, he's got to be in the water because he's from Atlantis, right? Oh, jeez, creepers. Yeah, it is very cool. I like this one here. Hello to Star Trek Discovery. Yeah, well done. Rusky Babes, I haven't ever read this yet. Interesting, unlike Aaron, I don't think there's any shows I watched as a kid and then saw years later that I thought were crap or disappointed by. You're lucky in that one. Obviously, some were too juvenile to watch again properly, but I tend to appreciate them on their own terms. That's good if you can do it, actually, I've got to say. I have heard stories. I remember Angie watching tonight. He'd say, I love this show as a kid. I watch as an adult, and it's like, oh, my God, it's bloody horrendous. Unfortunately, it does happen. The rose-tinted glasses of youth have somewhat faded over the decades, and subsequently, we don't enjoy them as much. But if you can, Rusky Babes, that is awesome to see.
We're vastly going over time, but the one story like that for me is the Tomorrow People. There's a particularly, I thought was scary episode when I was growing up where the monsters are these giant bellboys, which are just weather balloons. And when I saw it later, I was like, I can't believe I was scared of that as a kid. They're just weather balloons. But in my mind, I'd seen The Prisoner. And because I'd seen them so young, they got mixed up. So the sentinels from The Prisoner coming out and going down the beach and like smothering people and killing them and stuff like that, I had put in to the Tomorrow People. So for years later, when Channel 7 repeated it, I thought it was particularly crap. But it wasn't. I just mixed it up with The Prisoner.
Indeed. And as Anne said, Voltron, it didn't work for him the second time around. So there you go. As you've said, there's a lot more we could discuss regarding this, but sadly our time has come at an end, which is absolutely spectacular. We like to leave you wanting more, even if you need an AI filter to make us look better. Don't forget, if you haven't done so already, be sure to check out the Sci-Fi Zone YouTube's socials and whatever else. There's always new stuff coming out. And of course, Mr. Aaron's Collectibles, your store, which is the coolest thing in the entire universe. Is that right there, Mr. Aaron?
Well, it's the center of my universe at the moment. I'm probably going to go back there tonight and do some sorting. So I kind of live there at the moment.
You hear that, fans? There's an 85% off everything sale in the store tonight. There you go. Get yourself, because Aaron's going to be there. Mate, I'm at the door right now. I love it. From a sci-fi perspective, he's trying to do it to boost up the Google numbers. Absolutely love it. Anyway, guys, we've got to buzz off. Thanks for joining us tonight for our gas bag and our conversation. We're going to leave you all too. We'll see you next Tuesday for some more Docky Who, but otherwise next Thursday where we discuss something else. After all, it's all about just talking stuff. All right, guys, take care. Leave you to it and see you later.
Good night.